One additional announcement they failed to mention this morning, that we're going to be putting a search team together for a new youth director. And what bothers me is that he says that he was waiting 2 months. I wonder what else is going on in that young mind, that young, demented mind of his. We'll get to it. Don't worry about that. It's great to come up here and not have to bring up the recent hurricane that attacked or that hit the United States, or there hasn't been a mass shooting in the United States this past week, at least that I know of, that we know of. But you understand that just because it didn't hit the United States doesn't mean there aren't bombings and other weather-related issues going on in this world. It just didn't come across our consciousness, didn't hit the news. But you don't have to dig very far. You don't have to look behind too many bushes before you see that the world, and it's always been this way. It's in a state of uproar, of waywardness, and it's in a state of pain. It's interesting to try to imagine what it's like to flee a group of people that are pursuing you because they want to take your lives, and you haven't done anything except you're a certain ethnicity or a certain religion, and so they're coming at you to extinguish you. And I'm sitting there, and you look at the stuff on the news, and you're going, and I can't help but being thankful that I don't have to be running from a group. But my heart just goes out to these folks, and it doesn't matter what color, right? It doesn't matter what country, it doesn't matter what religion, that they have to be in flight because of their very lives. And having said that, it doesn't mean that our lives are easy. And it probably didn't take you long to figure out that to be alive meant that you encounter difficulties, that namely that life is hard. And there may be seasons here and there, and there may be certain things going on where it's not as hard. In fact, sometimes it might just be a one huge celebration for a certain amount of time, but things kick in. Things just happen, and some of it you participated, some of it has nothing to do with you yourself. It just came upon you, and you find yourself in the middle of a, like the perfect storm, or the middle of a mess, and you don't know how to get out. You run against a wall and maybe read a book or talk to a few people who have some wisdom, and maybe they say, I don't know, or they give you some advice, and you give it a try, and you run at it again, and there looks like there's some light at the end of the tunnel, and then the tunnel collapses. And this becomes sort of a cycle. And that's not abnormal, by the way. That seems to be what happens to a lot of people. A lot of folks, that's like their life. They can just talk of that. And the only way to escape that is to not care about anything and not care about anyone. Don't ever have any kids, right? Don't even get married. Never enter into a relationship. Never let your heart get attached to someone else. Just you in the middle of the woods or in the middle of the cave, just you, and that's it. Don't even love a dog. Don't even love a cat. And don't even, because they're going to die too. And someone said, look, if you want to be spared the pain of losing a pet, get a giant sea tortoise. Because they live about 300 years or so. So even if you get one that's middle-aged, it'll outlive you. I'm going, well, I don't think that's going to work, a sea tortoise. But it's just tough. And so you get to the book of Exodus, and what you see is a life of all the Hebrew people that's in turmoil. And it's been going on for generations. It's been going on for hundreds of years. But God has called, they become God's chosen people. Meaning God's watching out, but it doesn't look like it. It looks like God's on vacation. Or it looks like God doesn't care. It looks like God's taking a nap. It looks like he's not involved at all. Because there are generations after generations that go, and their circumstances, if they change, they get worse. And I don't know, you don't read it in the account, but I'm wondering, are they going, hello? I mean, come on now. It's time. We've been waiting. We haven't heard anything. We haven't seen anything. And so early in Exodus, God causes this baby to be named Moses to be born. He's hidden in the reeds in the Nile, and Pharaoh's daughter comes and sees him, and he ends up living in the royal court, and she raises him. And then Moses, as a young man, he goes and he kills somebody, and you shouldn't do that, right? And so he's on the run. He goes to Midian, and he gets married and has a kid, but he becomes a shepherd for 40 years, and all of a sudden, it's like out of nowhere, God pops up out of a burning bush and says, Moses, he says, here I am. He says, Moses, I got a job for you. This is what you are to do in life. I want you to go and talk to the Hebrew people. I want you to go talking to Pharaoh, and I want you to tell Pharaoh that he's to let all you people go so they can go and serve me. But he's not going to listen to you. And so if you're Moses, you might be thinking, well, why should I do that if it's not going to work? Why should I when he's not going to listen? Well, why bother? And God just says, look, just do it, would you? And he says, well, I don't speak very good. I stutter and I get tongue-tied and twisted up, and, I'm not very eloquent. And God says, would you I am God. Just do it. And so he cooperates, he goes and does it, but of course Pharaoh has hardened his heart. And if you're reading through Exodus, and God also hardens Pharaoh's heart again and again and again. Not only does Pharaoh harden his own heart, God hardens his heart. And you go, that seems odd. Yeah, it does. I don't think that's God's norm, but at times, and there are situations when he will do that to get his will done. So he hardens Pharaoh's heart. And it gets so bad, God says, okay, I got to bring these plagues down. And we talked about this last week, that God turned the Nile River into blood, so they have like nothing to drink, even where they had water stored in pots and jars, that also turned into blood. And then all the fish died. And then you have all this smell from dead fish and dried up blood, and it's just a mess. And at the end, you know what Pharaoh does? It says he goes into his house, closes the door. It didn't faze him. And how it can, I don't know, except he had a hardened heart. And you kind of think, well, that's kind of like people. God does things, and sometimes God plays hard, and they just kind of like with God, take a hike. I'm not going to serve you. I'm not going to obey you. I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to do life without you. So, thanks, but no thanks. Get lost. People still do that today, right? A lot of people do that today. And God's not doing these plagues. Anyway, God ends up with a total of 10 plagues before Pharaoh finally says, that's it, just get out of here and let us help you leave. And today we're going to be talking about, when I say we, really it's me, right? Yeah, we're not going to say anything, we're just sitting here. But I'm going to talk about this 10th plague after the Nile is turned to blood, and then you have frogs, and you have lice, and you have cattle that are dying, and all so much. And then there's darkness, and finally you get to this last one. And God says, look, for my people, you can escape this last plague, but you have to do something. You have to obey. You now listen up. Listen up here. And I call this the preparation for the Passover. So this last thing is the Passover, where God says, look, I'm going to come to your homes, and every firstborn child, even with animals, the firstborn of an animal, if you don't do this, I'm going to take all of their lives. Even the firstborn, Pharaoh, your firstborn, even those that are in prison, their firstborn, Lord, even the slaves of the Egyptians, even their firstborn. I'm going to take the firstborn of every single family, of even all the livestock, but you got to do this and you can escape this. So this is the preparation so they don't have their firstborn taken from them. So Moses called for all the elders of Israel and said to them, go and take for yourselves lambs according to your families and slay the Passover lamb. That's number one. You slay the Passover lamb. Now that's just gross. A lamb, there is no threat to a lamb. A lamb doesn't go, a lamb doesn't come at you, right? A lamb, they're not sitting there scheming how we're going to overthrow the household. You know, they're like about as innocent as can be. To me, it's like killing a puppy. A puppy or a kitten. A kitten, I mean, how can you do that? You can't do that. That's unthinkable. Yeah, see, it became a part of the family for like 4 days. And so, but you were to slay this lamb, then you should take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the blood, which is in the basin. So they drain the blood of the lamb into a basin. See, it gets even grosser, doesn't it? Blood of anything. My own blood, your blood of an animal. We want to clean it up. And it says you drain it in a basin, and then you take this hyssop, you dip it in the blood, and you apply some of the blood that's in the basin to the lintel, that is the post over the door frame, and the two door post, and none of you shall go outside of his house until morning. So you want to escape this? You don't want your firstborn to die? This is what you do. You bring in a lamb, you kill the lamb, you drain the blood of the lamb into a basin, and you take this, it's like brush or a plant, and you like paint the inside, the top part of your doorpost, and you go along both sides of your doorpost. And then it had also things you were to eat part of the lamb, but don't go outside until morning. Don't go and see if anyone else is doing it. Don't check on your neighbors. You just stay in your house. Kill the perfect lamb, the without blemished lamb. The lamb that didn't do anything to you. You drain the blood. You don't go looking around. I got to ask you, did they do it? You bet they did it. They just saw God's previous 9 plagues. They knew God wasn't messing around. They said, if you want your firstborn to live, at that point you may have been thinking, well, I don't know. But for most people, of course I do. Of course I do. I mean, what will you do? How many safety precautions have we taken, those of you that are parents, to make sure your kids were safe? And they were going to continue to. We did like everything, didn't we? And even now, if you have a little toy and it could put an eye out, or they could choke, or whatever, they take them off the market. And I remember we had all these like plastic things you put into the sockets so they don't electrocute themselves. I never will forget. My firstborn, we had moved into this house, and he's like about 4 years old or so, and he's got this paper clip he's undone, and he's sitting in the socket, and he's just jamming it in and out of there. And I'm thinking, where do you come up with this stuff? Whose son are you? And he just, I'm sitting there, I go, you get over there and you take it from me. Don't ever do that. And, you could kill yourself. And you do all kinds of things to make sure that they're safe. Because if something happened, you'd never get over it, right? You never get over that stuff. So you do what you can. And here I'm guessing that like they double checked. They put enough blood up, and the wife came and said, "I don't think that's enough blood. Put right." That's what they do. That's kind of running down, and we're not supposed to get it on the floor, and so you put it up there, and you go, okay. And part of it is this: that anything that's important to you in life, you check and double check, don't you? You triple check. These days, when I pull out an intersection, you know how many oftentimes I look to the left and right? I'm like this, because for some reason I don't pick up on things as I used to. I don't know if it's age or eyesight or other things going on, but I'm looking 2 or 3 times just to make sure something isn't coming. And when I go to back my car up, I'm looking, a number of times because I'm double checking, I'm triple checking stuff. When I walk over, whenever I go out, leave the house these days, I'm checking 2 or 3 times. Do I have my phone? Do I have my glasses? Do I have my wallet? I'm kind of like this. You think I'm the third base coach and giving signs to the runner? I'm all like this, and people are like, "What's wrong with him? He's just a paranoid pastor." The guy has issues. And so I get up here this morning, I'm checking, making sure the microphone's on a couple times, make sure the light's on, and I'm just checking things, making sure, and things can still go wrong, but you just check stuff. Because if it's important, you check it, you double check it. And so doesn't say this, I'm guessing they're just looking, making sure that there's enough. Did they go outside in the morning? No, they did not go outside. In fact, they probably waited till about noon just to make sure, right? Or they waited till they heard someone else milling around. They're not dead, so I guess it's safe for us to go out now. But you just make sure, and that's preparation stuff. I mean, there may be time to take chances, but this isn't one of them. Not when something so important, namely our firstborn's on the line, because here comes Passover. Here comes Passover. And this is what God does. And this is why you had to prepare for this, because the Lord will pass through to smite the Egyptians, and when he sees the blood on the lintel and on the 2 doorposts, the Lord will pass over the door and will not allow the destroyer to come into your houses to smite you. God will not allow the destroyer. Of course, the question, who's the destroyer? It's not Satan, okay? That's not the person. There's different couple thoughts on that. Is it some in Exodus 12 reads the angel of death or the angel of destruction. If you get into a psalm, it sounds like it's an angel or angels. Some say, could it be the pre-incarnate Christ who has come? Because he appears sometimes in his pre-incarnate state in the Old Testament. And we're going, not exactly sure, but probably some, empowered angelic being and or beings who strictly has this purpose. He will not allow the destroyer to come in and take the lives of your firstborn. But you have to have the blood. The blood's a protection. If you don't kill the lamb, if you don't drain the blood, if you don't paint the blood on the doorpost, if you go outside, if you don't do these things, guess what? You're not protected. And it's not that maybe something will happen, something will happen. But every single Egyptian home, God did not pass over, and so there was loud wailing in the whole country of Egypt. Can you imagine? Every single couple who has had at least one child, they lost that kid that night. We're all in this together. It's not an isolated case. Every single. And if you only had one, guess what? It's gone. And all your animals, you lost livestock that night. Pharaoh lost his oldest one. No exception for the Egyptians. And so the whole country is mourning and they're wailing. And they just said, we can't take this anymore. See, this is one of the greatest events in the history of Israel. I mean, for a long time now, they're having to remember what happened at the Passover. See, and I'll say, anything important, not only do you check and double check, anything important you pass on. Right, parents, anything important you think is really important, you will intentionally pass on to your kids. And, some of you, we all know, what did my parents pass on to me? You know. The things they told you again and again and again. I don't know how many times I was told this: don't show off, 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 don't show off. Don't bring attention to yourself. Don't bring attention to yourself. Don't do that. When you go up and down the stairs, make sure you always hang on to the handrail. We told as little kids, when you're going up and down the stairs, you always hang on to the handrail. Never know when you're going to stumble. You always hang on to the rail. The third thing, guys, always check your zipper before you go out, right? Always check your zipper. And when you're a kid, it's like, is the barn door closed? Is the barn door closed? You don't want the cows to get out. I mean, that was like how we went with that. And I go, yeah, barn door's closed. Barn door's closed. I'm checking. So you need to, check this stuff. But anything important, you'll pass on to your kids. And so I said, you guys, the Passover, it's so important. You need to be passing on the Passover. And this is what God said. You shall observe this event as an ordinance for you and your children. You know how long? Forever. It doesn't matter what year it is. It doesn't matter how old they are. You shall make sure you observe, you pay attention. You do Passover. See, it'll come about, your children are going to ask you someday, why are we doing this? Or what does this rite mean to you? In today's vernacular, they'd say, this is stupid. That's what this is stupid. What are we doing this for? That's for you old people. But what's this mean? And you say, it's a Passover sacrifice to the Lord who passed over the houses of the sons of Israel in Egypt when he smote the Egyptians, but he spared our homes. Everyone else, their firstborn died, but not us. Not us Hebrew people. See, God passed over. We put the blood up. We killed the lamb. And so we're going to remember this forever. Well, guess when people think the Passover, the first one, happened? When did this event in Exodus happen? Well, I don't know, a long time ago. Yeah. They figured about 1446 BC. About 1446 BC, and the Hebrew people have been observing Passover now for 3,500 years. 3,500 years, they have been making sure we observe this, and we're passing on the Passover. And if you're a Hebrew person, if you're a Jewish person, if you're a synagogue person, if you're a rabbi, do you know what you do? Once a year, normally March or April, you pay attention to Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. You just do that. We wouldn't think of not doing that. It's just what you do. We don't go on break. If the kids are out, we pay attention to this. We have to do it. And that happened 3,500 years ago. Why would we keep doing that? See, I think we have an addiction to newness, where new is better and the old is boring. And so anything that's new, we have to get. See, I'm going to confess here, this is an iPhone, but it is an older model. What's the newest model that's out now? 8? I'm behind because this is a 5S. For some of you younger people, that's ridiculous. How can you live with yourself, right? No wonder you're the way that you are. You're not on the latest. You don't have all the upgrades. I haven't got this figured out yet. I really don't. It does things, I don't understand it. It sends things from me that aren't from me. And so if you get something that looks suspicious, it has a life of its own. I plug it in, and next morning it went to another room. It does all kinds of different things like that. I don't need new. I really don't need new. I don't mind some new things, but don't think that just because it's new that it's better. It's like we have a distaste or an apathy for the past. That there's not an understanding of history, and so what? And we don't worship it, but we should have some understanding of certain things in our past that's brought us to where we're currently at. One thing we have to understand that is through death comes life, or as you can see the bottom part, through the death of a lamb comes life for God's people. And that's part of what the Passover, if you wouldn't have killed the lamb, if you wouldn't have drained the blood, if you wouldn't have this couldn't have happened. God would not have passed over. So the death of the lamb brought you life and brought you exodus out of Egypt. Now, from all this, here's are the people's response. And it's praising God for Passover. And the people bowed low and worshiped. It hasn't happened yet, but God told them what they needed to do and what would happen if they didn't do that, what would happen to the Egyptians. And the people, I love this. Look, you can't bow high, can you? So the only way you can bow is low. You can't go up and bow. You have to bow low. I just came out of a culture, I was over in Japan a couple weeks ago, and they do a lot of this. They just do a lot of this stuff. And I'm out there trying to shake their hand. They're trying to do this, and somehow we meet in the middle with that or do both. But they bow a lot to show respect. And here, they bowed low. The people bowed low, and they worshiped God. And I know, that's something that me and you and we need to be bowing low because you can't bow high. And you need God his proper place because he's worthy of worship. Not only he is worthy to be worshipped for what he has done. That's the only real response to Passover. Now, I got to bring up this next one. I call it the patience for Passover. Okay, patience for Passover. Because you have to understand something, that it came about at the end of 430 years. To the very day. To the very day? Yeah, God had it calculated to the very day. 430 years that all the host of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt. So how long had the Hebrew people been in Egypt? 430 years. And I'm trying to do the math on this because at the end of Genesis, Joseph dies, he's 110. And shortly thereafter, all Joseph's generation dies, and the new Pharaoh comes in who didn't pay attention, didn't care about Joseph, and he brings on hardship. So it's not very long after Joseph's death. And Joseph reigned in Egypt probably around 80 years. So, this is like general math. 430 minus 80, but about 350 years, or somewhere around in there. They're under hardship and slavery and infanticide. You get a little baby Hebrew boy, you toss him into the Nile. He's supposed to die. Put paper clips in the receptacles. They're supposed to die. And so they've been living like this for 350 some years. They've been in there for 430 years. That's a long time. It's a long time. Let me ask you, do you know how many years it's been since Abraham Lincoln was assassinated? Somebody go, well, long time? Yeah, 152 years ago. 152, 1865, right? So do you know how many years it's been since George Washington was born? I just did the math. 285 years. 285 years. So add another 145 years since George Washington was born, and he had 430 years. It's a long, long time. It's been a long wait. Many of them go on the entire time, right? Lives have come and gone, and they didn't get any relief. And it can cause you to distrust God. This is foolishness. Let's try something that works. Let's bow down to another God because this one's either not paying attention or he doesn't have the power to do anything. Come on, let's come on. And they go, no. No, it's been 300 some years, but we're going to stay generation after generation. Where is God? And this is the takeaway. We can trust God to bring us out and take us through. And you have to have that. And for some people, let's say with the gift of faith, for them, that's right. Life is hard, but I am trusting God to take us out and to take us through. It might not happen tomorrow. It may not happen in my life. But one thing that I know that I'm going to put my faith and trust in a sovereign, really good God, because one day He's going to take us out. He's going to bring us out. He's going to take us through on His schedule. We want things like what now? What's it take to get you to where your patience is on end? What's it take? Some of you going, I'm there now. Is this about done? What's it take? I was there 10 minutes ago. You know what, for most of us? Nothing. A minute or two. We just see something else going a little faster. What would it be like for you to intentionally drive in the right lane, the slower lane? Intentionally. Some of you going, you're just getting worked up now. Right? I mean, you're just getting all, animated. Why would I do that? Why would I do? She's going slow. Speed limit, 2 miles an hour under the speed limit. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't be able to drive. Must be an old person. And on it goes. What's it take? Here, almost nothing. And you have to go, what's up with that? And they had to wait like 350 years. So there's got to be patience. To trust God, bring us out and take us through. Now I know you're not Jewish and I'm not Jewish, and you're like, what in the world does that got to do with us? Here's the thing. Jesus is our Passover lamb. Before he died, he has the Last Supper in the upper room with his disciples, and it's during what? Passover. He's about ready to go out and to be sacrificed and crucified. Do you think they missed that? They put the two together because they're good, obedient to God people. We've been observing this Passover for 1,500 years. And Christ shows up, and he's doing this, and he goes into, this is my body, and this is my blood, and eat this and do this. It says, clean out the old leaven that you may be a new lump, just as you are in fact unleavened for Christ. For Christ, our Passover, also has been sacrificed. It wouldn't be wrong for us to observe the Passover or Christ as our Passover, as our sacrifice, let's say, every day. And whenever we do communion, what we're recognizing that he is our Passover lamb. And so we're following in the tradition that began back in 1446 BC. May we not forget. May we bow low in worship. Romans says, much more than having now been justified, what by his blood we shall be saved from the wrath of God through him. That's right. Because through the death of the Lamb comes life for God's people. I know it was messy. Blood's messy. But only through death comes life. And only when you die to self can you live for God, or for anyone else, by the way. Through the death of the Lamb comes life for us. It has to be that way. It happened 2,000 years ago, and you say, well, that's old news. Yeah, but it's the most important news you'll ever hear. And folks, I just tell you, there are people all around us who need to hear this. They need to hear it, and they need to understand. And hopefully when they do, they will bow low, right? They will bow low, and they will worship our almighty God. And I go, because we can trust God to bring us out and take us through. And so I'm going to ask you today, I don't know what's going on in your life, but can you, with whatever's going on in your world, will you trust God? That I don't know when, but you will trust him because you know he will come through. You won't have to wait 350 years. Someday, some way, that it may not even be in your lifetime, but someday, some way, that God will come through and bring us out and take us through. Passover, man, it's huge for us.